Can a $2.25 notebook from Daiso really handle fountain pens and other writing implements as well as our high-end stationery? Today I'm putting it to the test with 12 different fountain pen ink combinations with different nib sizes, as well as some of the most commonly used pens and markers out there. But we'll see how they stack up against some amazing competitors in the high end spectrum, including Hobonichi, Life, Clairefontaine, and a number of others. So let's dig into this. Today I'm going to be testing, like I said, these 4 notebooks, which I all got from Daiso, all at $2.25. They are all thinner notebooks, which would explain some of that price difference. So please keep that in mind as we're going through these. They are cheaper, but they also have less paper. So most of them I think have around 40 pages. And my notebooks that I'm going to be comparing them to have many more pages than that. We'll just say that. I'm actually going to go and show you this one first. And this is the campus notebook that I picked up. It is by Kakuno, and I've used the campus notebooks before. I love them. I haven't had any that are quite like this as far as size goes, but the paper should be the same, I thought. So I went ahead and picked up one of the campus notebooks that they carry, and they do, if memory serves, they had quite a few different colors and styles of the campus notebooks. And then these 3 are all made for Daiso specifically. They even have Daiso on the back to kind of continue with that branding. So I don't know if Daiso directly makes these or if they're made for Daiso, if that makes sense. But this one reminded me so much of my Life notebook that I had to pick it up to see if it really did compare to that. It's the premium notebook. I didn't see any other real branding on this one, so I can't tell you more than that. And then I had a brand that's I really struggle with some of these Korean names or Japanese names. Salala. So I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but we picked up this one. When I saw it on the shelf, the paper was really smooth, felt like it had a coating on it, which a lot of the fountain pen friendly stationery will have, so that your ink doesn't bleed and feather too much. So I picked this one up. And then I also picked up this one for the same reason. It felt like it had that thicker quality to the paper. And I really liked the way that this grid was, because you have a nice outer grid and then there's a light inner grid to that, which I thought could be really fun for some pen play projects, we'll say. So to test these, I made a spread on each one of them that's pretty much the same. I wrote pen testing at the top, and I used the same pen for that in every one of them. And then I made a small box and wrote out the name of the fountain pen I was using and what ink was in that fountain pen. I didn't include nib sizes, but I will, as I take you through what pens I used, tell you what those nib sizes are. And then as far as we have on this side, I took all of my popular pens and stuff, which I'll go through in a minute here, and made swatches of them on this side. And I try to do the same type of swatches on every single notebook so that we have more of a one-on-one type comparison. So for pen testing, I did use an Energel Klena, and this was the 0.5 version. I have the 0.3 right here just because my kids ran off with my 0.5, but it looks very similar to this. They're a gel ink pen, and they do tend to bleed through a lot of different paper types. So I wanted to test that one specifically. Then when we got into our fountain pens, my first one is the one that I've had the most issue with actually this year. It's currently empty because I just cleaned a bunch of these out. But this is my Pilot Penmanship. It's a $10 pen, and it has an extra fine nib. It's been inked up all year with the Pilot high-end black ink, which tends to do a lot of feathering right now in my Hobonichi cousin or anything with the Tomoe River paper. So that was my first test. I figured that would be a good test as far as any feathering goes. Then I had my Pilot Custom 74. This was another fine tipped pen, and I'd inked it up with Robert Oster's Pink Squirrel, another ink that I've found a lot of feathering issues in my Tomoe River paper. So I figured the two of them would be really good. Then I have my Cross ATX. This just has a fine point and it was inked up with KWZ's Honey just because I wanted some variety in here. Then I have my Pilot Vanishing Point. This was their custom pen for last year, and it has a medium nib actually in here. And I inked it up with Troublemakers Patchouli. I'm really bad at these names. I know. I'm so sorry. But it's a nice green blue ink, and so I wanted to see how that one went. Next was my Esterbrook Raven, and this one has an extra fine nib and was inked up with Waringel's Captain Hook. I wanted a nice deep red ink to really see if it would go through or if it would stay where it was supposed to. Red inks tend to, or red pens for that matter, tend to bleed through a little bit more for me. Next, I have my Esterbrook JR Twinkle, which is inked up with a combination of Colorverse's Rainy Day and Ferris Wheel Press's Storied Blue and a medium nib. So it has a little bit more ink coming onto the page. I also inked up my Esterbrook Model J. This is probably one of my thickest lines and juiciest pens. It has a flex nib on it, and currently it is inked up with Diamine's Nightfall, which is not only a glittery ink, but it's super dark. It bleeds through most papers, I would say, especially the Tomoe River papers I've been using this year. So I wanted to see how that one would stack up. Then I have my two Sailor pens. These are both fine nibs, and one has Diamine's Celadon Cat, and the other one has a Sailor brown ink that I neglected to write down, so I can't remember. Then we had my two new Benoos. One is a fine nib and the other is a medium. And these were inked up with Sailor's Nagini. I always want to say Nagini because it always makes me think of Harry Potter. And then I had one inked up with Diamine's Icy Lilac, which is it's a very shimmery ink, and I wanted to see how it was going to handle that load of shimmer. As far as our normal pens go, besides the Energel Clenna, I wanted a click art pen. So I chose this one in a nice bright pink. Pink tends to be another color that will often come through on the other side of papers. Then I did my Edding metallic brush pen in red, which this one is another one that bleeds through a lot of things. Then I did the color dot marker, and I made sure to do both ends, and I tried to do different size dots. Not always, but I wanted to get a really good idea of how it was going to handle and whether or not I was going to get little bits of bleed through. But I also wanted to check that fine point end, so that if it bled through the dots, but maybe didn't with the fine point. Our next one is one that pretty much universally bleeds through everything. And this was just a challenge type test for the paper. This is a Tombow alcohol-based marker. These pretty much bleed through anything, and they're lovely. I adore them, but they do very much bleed through. Next, we have the Mildliner, and I tested both the basic bold and the fine nibs just to give us a good idea. So the writing is the fine point, and the swatch next to it will always be the more chiseled end. Next, I pulled in a Zebra Blend pen because I wanted to test a thicker gel pen, and this was the thickest one that I own. It's a 0.7. Flow is really decent. It's a nice, strong color. So I figured that would be a good test. Then I did the Tombow Fude pen, and this is in black. These are obviously thicker lines. It has a lot more ink flowing onto the paper, so I felt like this would be another good test. And then the last one is, again, another challenge for the papers because I wanted to see just where their limitations were. So I have a Pilot permanent pen. This is a fine point. I use this on my vinyl matte stickers and things like that. So those are all the pens that we're testing. Oh, I forgot one. I'm so sorry. I skipped over this one. But after the Mildliner, we do test out the Tombow water-based marker. And this one is a nice deep red. The larger swatch is always going to be the brush end. And the Tombow water is always wrote with the finer nib. Let's see how these stood up against all of those other notebooks. And I think the best thing to do is show you what those notebooks do first, and then we'll go into these. I think it's fitting to kind of start here with the Tomoe River paper. This is the whole reason I've been testing out other papers this year. Here's everything all wrote out. Our other pens are down here at the bottom. You can see on this particular page, there isn't any feathering. That is not true for the whole book, but the bleed through is minimum on this particular page. We just have the pilot penmanship. The alcohol-based Tombow almost looks like it was done on this side. The Benu with the icy lilac bled through here, as well as the Benu above that. There's a little bleed through here, a little at the top, but there wasn't any feathering on this particular page. However, I will show you two other pages. One is my ink test from the beginning of the year, in case you guys didn't see this. So I went through here, and these are all different pens that I've used. I will link this test up above for you guys. But essentially, I did every pen that I could think of, and this was the result of them. And you can see how this is, oh, that's the glitter one. Here's the red. It didn't bleed through here, but the glitter ones do. So just as an FYI, and there's quite a bit of bleed through in this area with the various different pens. So as far as feathering goes, if you look here, you can really see the way the ink kind of spreads out. And that's one of the things I'm hoping doesn't happen in these notebooks. But I wanted to show you what it would look like if it did feather, and that was a really good example. This is my Life notebook. We're going to pull this over in comparison directly with that other notebook that reminded me of it. But just to give you an idea, we have everything swatched out here. And the only thing that we have bleed through are those two that I figured would bleed through, the alcohol marker and the permanent pen. Everything else is hardly even ghosting. I mean, you can see that there's writing there, but it's not that much. Then the Clairefontaine has the same thing. And then we have these four. So the top one here is the Chubble Gum. I recently got this. It's a US brand, so if you're looking for US notebooks, theirs work really, really well. There's maybe a little bit of feathering down here, but it's very minimal. And then this is what the bleed through looks like on this side. Not as good as I would like, but you know, it's okay. Then we have the Romeo paper. This was something I purchased off of Amazon. It's an Asian, I believe, company. And again, I didn't see any feathering with this particular paper. It works really well. Very little bleed through. Like there's just there's a lot of ghosting with the Pilot permanent pen, but only a dot of bleed through and the alcohol marker there. This is the campus notebook that I have. And this is a spiral bound that you can insert more paper in, but you can see how nice it is to write on. These aren't super expensive, not quite as cheap as the Daiso one, but still not horribly expensive. And then very little on the bleed through. This is actually me writing on the other side. Sorry guys, I was testing out the new Conklin on here, but yeah. Not a whole lot of bleed through there other than the ones that we expected. Then we have, this is probably my current favorite brand, which is the Minosmi, or however you say this. And super smooth paper. Again, no feathering on this side that I saw. And then the back, I mean, we have some minimal bleed through on a couple of these. Maybe, I think that's the diamine. hold on. Oh, it's the Esterbrook Twinkle actually that bled through a little bit. And the Model J as well. So anyhow, that's what we're working against to see, or that's what we're comparing to see how these stack up. Now, this first notebook, let's take the Life notebook and set them side by side because I want to just show you this. So you can see how their stylings are very similar. They both have this nice frame around them. They both have the black tape binding here. The color of the paper is pretty much the same. I mean, this might be a little bit lighter, but it's pretty similar. And the size of the grid, I think, is also similar. And they wrote pretty much identically on here. And the bleed through was just the 2 pence, nothing else. So this actually did better than some of those higher end notebooks I just showed you. And yes, it's a smaller size. Yes, it has less paper, but that's okay. You know, sometimes you need a smaller notebook. Then we have the S1, I'll call it. And I really loved this one. I love how smooth it is. I didn't see any feathering when I was writing with any of the inks. The bleed through was substantial in here, but the writing experience was really nice. Then we have this larger notebook, we'll call it. Again, it had a really nice writing experience. I didn't see any feathering, which made me really happy. Everything down here looked good. As far as bleed through on this one, again, it was more than I had hoped for, but it's not horrible. Like, I don't know that you'd be able to use the back side of the paper, but the next page is fine. So just food for thought on that one. And then as far as the campus goes, let me bring over the other campus so you can see them side by side. So I think the paper is probably the exact same paper. They wrote pretty much the same. I didn't see any feathering or anything like that. And not a whole lot of bleed through, just the Tombow and the Pilot. There is a little bit of ghosting, but it's not bad. It wouldn't bother me at all. And I could use both sides of this one. So final thoughts, are these 4 notebooks as good as all of my high-end notebooks? Probably. For the most part, I mean, definitely these 2. Okay. And if I was going to say anything about these ones, I would say they would be notebooks that I would use the front side of a page, not the back side, maybe put a sheet here, and I would be totally fine just using the notebook that way and possibly using it for letters and that kind of thing. So I would say that these are worth it, to be honest. And this one specifically, if you're working on letters or things of that nature, like your penmanship, this one I think would be really, really good. Because not only do you have that bigger grid, like I said, you have a smaller grid inside, so it can really help you with your placement of your letters and things like that. So anyhow, what do you guys think of these notebooks? Would you pick them up? Do you go to Daiso? Do you have one near you? I don't have one near me, but it was really fun to stop by the one in Chicago. Anyhow, that's all I have for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it and that this was helpful. And until next time, I'll see you real soon.